Move on to the second part of the morning session. Our debate will focus on two fundamental rights which have already been mentioned in other presentations, but we will zero into them more in detail. So, fundamental rights for children wherever they are born, the right to food, and this doesn't mean simply to feed oneself, but to have access to proper and nutritious food, supporting growth in the age of development, and the right to healthcare assistance, which means right to healthcare ever since you're born, and access to the due care whenever it is necessary. So, food, nutrition, healthcare, this underlies existence, and where they are denied or limited, there is no human dignity. Should this happen during childhood, an age that is sacred, should be sacred for everyone, well, makes it even more unacceptable. Given the expertise you carry, you are very well aware of the problems of poverty, of hunger, of marginalization, these situations that affect far too many children across the world. We are all aware that the 2030 deadline is growing closer, and the goal to narrow inequalities between countries is still far from being achieved. Then again, we won't be stopping, we won't give in. We have to focus on the inequalities that affect the innocent, whether they deprive the essential, whether they cause distortions such as a surplus of food. We have undernourishment and child obesity. There are two different forms of malnutrition. They are both tell us that a whole lot of children are suffering. So today we have the opportunity of sharing expertise, knowledge, know-how to better address these situations and problems that deprive children of their future. So our committee is working on this. As Father Enzo said, we want to focus on the cultural elements to be disclosed to the world. I now leave the floor to Riccardo Paternò di Montecupo, Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Order of Malta. Thank you very much. It is an honor for me to attend this summit convened by the Holy Father, which puts a dramatic problem at the center of the world debate, namely that of children, their need for protection and their need for education in this phase of their life. This morning we have listened to a number of speeches. We have heard about hybridization, technological hybridization. We've talked about schools. Senator Segre told us that the rights of the vulnerable are violated amid indifference, and that's a scourge. That definitely is a huge scourge. The chief economist of the World Food Programme asked a very subtle question. What's the cost of not dealing with children? Which becomes even more relevant because it's not just a moral issue. It's not just a moral thing that involves all of us. It is also an economic problem, oddly enough. Why do I say oddly? Because everyone thinks that if we take care of children, that will be costly. But as the chief economist of the WFP said, what is more costly is not dealing with them. And there are other problems aside from education, access to food and healthcare. We know that international law is being violated by everyone, basically, and these children are not being protected. So the situation is indeed complex. So the Order of Malta intends to deal with children, their birth, their nutrition, and possibly educating them in a balanced and healthy way. Our order has always been at the forefront in this regard. I will try to point out a few figures, some data that characterize our activity globally when it comes to these issues. But it is also important to make the most of this moment to make a global appeal as to the need to work more and more together to uphold these values. First of all, we make sure that children are born in a clinically sound environment. Since 1989 in Bethlehem, we have been running the Holy Family Hospital, and 1 year ago, the 100,000th child was born there. It's a highly specialized facility. So, being born in a proper situation is something we ensure in Benin, in Cameroon, in Cote d'Ivoire, Madagascar, and many more countries where roughly 15,000 children are born each year. Clearly, all this is not enough. We have a millennium-year-old history in ensuring and providing healthcare services. This goes for Africa, Asia, and in the Western world as well. We provide medicines, we provide medical care to children, and we do that in Europe as well, as I was saying. Now, when it comes to food, this is something that involves all of us. Since last summer, the Order of Malta has been closely cooperating with the Patriarch of Jerusalem, distributing in Gaza City foodstuffs, fresh food. Every 2 months we help about 1,000 families a month, and we have handed out 100,000 tons in food. That is a huge effort on our part, and we will continue to do so until the end of the year. The Patriarchate of Jerusalem is clearly a key actor in this initiative, and we will also begin to offer healthcare assistance in Gaza. For example, children face serious physical healthcare-related issues, but also mental ones, which are very complex. So we have been taking care of in Ukraine and in Gaza, hopefully, even with children who have mental disorders, who are victims of these tragic situations, who have witnessed situations that nobody would ever want to witness. I would like to point out that we are living in a context where there's no room for hesitation. When I was looking at the figures, I truly was shocked. Today there are some 470 million children in the world. That accounts for 20% of all the children in the world who live in war-ravaged areas. In Gaza, apparently between 11,000 and 15,000 children were killed. That's an average of 40 children a day, considering how long the war has lasted, since 7th of October of 2023. So these figures speak for themselves. But there are more. Who will take care of these children? Who will make sure they have access to education? Living in a war theater means that your education process is disrupted. So who will deal with this? We, as a Christian community, and we, as the Order of Malta, we think that we should really join forces and do something together. given the great help that the Catholic Church is giving, every single child should have access to medical care. Every single child should be protected against these brutal tragedies such as people smuggling, exploitation, and so on. So hopefully we can truly spread the culture of life and family. So for all these reasons, I would like to stress once again the role of the Order of Malta. We are here, we are available to join in any initiative that can work in this regard. So I thank you for inviting me, and I thank the Holy Father.
Grazie. La parola.
Thank you. I'm giving the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister for Human Development and Minister of Health and Population of the Arab Republic of Egypt, Mr. Ghaffar.
Advocates for children's rights, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, throughout all the holy books, children are placed at the core of moral and social responsibility. Their innocence, vulnerability, and boundless potential are safeguarded by divine teachings guiding humanity towards compassion and justice. In Christianity, and I'm quoting Matthew, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." In Judaism, "Defend the weak," and I'm quoting Sam, "Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed." In Islam, and I'm quoting from the Holy Quran, "Whoever saves a life, it is as if they have saved all the humanity." It is with great pleasure and deep commitment that I stand before you today representing the Arab Republic of Egypt at this historic World Leaders Summit on Children's Rights. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness Pope Francis for his unwavering moral leadership and for convening this vital dialogue. Children's rights are increasingly at risk, particularly in the context of humanitarian crisis. The world is witnessing unprecedented threats to the safety and well-being of children. Today, it is estimated that 400 million children, roughly 1 in 5, are living and fleeing from conflict zones. Many are being injured, killed, abducted, or sexually violated. Like all nations, Egypt recognizes that its future depends on its younger generation by prioritizing their health, well-being, and development, and ensuring their protection. Approximately 34% of Egypt's population is under the age of 15, exemplifying the critical need for strong policies supporting child welfare and health. One of our most ambitious endeavors is 100 Million Healthy Lives initiative that was launched in 2018. This effort has set a global benchmark in global health, where Egypt achieved the golden tier status in eradicating hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and malaria. This initiative embodies a transformative model of early detection, prevention, and intervention, particularly in pediatric health care. Preventable diseases should never be a cause of childhood suffering. Egypt expanded the program of immunization to achieve over 95% coverage, and screening over 13 million school children for hepatitis C and conducting nearly 50 million nutritional assessments. In addition to hearing impairment initiative by screening 6 million infants, and expanding our services for mental health and expanding services for autism spectrum and spinal muscle dystrophy, and strengthening the newborn screening for congenital and genetic diseases, preventing severe health complications. Nutrition plays a fundamental role in the child's ability to thrive, given that nearly half of the global children fatalities under 5 are linked to undernutrition. And Egypt has adopted a comprehensive approach through the National Food and Nutrition Strategy and our school feeding initiative, reaching 12 million children, is improving learning outcomes and reducing micronutrient deficiencies and reinforcing the essential link between nutrition and cognitive development. In our global community, protecting children requires both universal commitment and respect for cultural values. While other traditions emphasizes family bonds and community care, modern challenges like gender controversies and digital risk poses grave concerns. Our collective priority must be safeguarding children's well-being through culturally sensitive approaches that respect traditional values and parental rights, ensuring their development into healthy members of society without exposure to ideologies that conflict with their cultural heritage. Our commitment extends beyond the national border of Egypt. Egypt has upheld its humanitarian responsibility by ensuring that refugees and migrants' children receive the same health care and educational opportunities as Egyptian children. I'm here not as a witness from social media or from words of mouth. I'm here as an eyewitness in my capacity as a Minister of Health and Population in Egypt. At the Rafah border, amidst the carnage and apocalyptic destruction in Gaza, the chaos and devastation, we welcome thousands of Palestinian children from Gaza, tiny souls bearing unimaginable wounds, their lives traumatized forever. Many arrived in silence, their limbs lost, their eyes hollow, with grief far beyond their years. Among them was little Ahmed, just under 2 years old, his fragile body maimed by indiscriminate bombardment, both legs and one arm gone. Lost his father and mother, arriving with his uncle in Egypt to receive treatment. He clung to life with the strength no child should ever need. Another heartbreaking devastation, the tiny infant from El Shifa Hospital, newborn, only days old, torn from their incubators when the hospital was bombed, gasping for warmth in the world that had already failed them. I held them with a heavy heart, knowing that no embrace could undo their suffering. Those beautiful souls will grow up without the love of their parents, without homes. How will they go to school, play in the playground, play sports? How can they stand idly by and let this happen to them? The world must act, and act now. Those children deserve the right to live in their hometown, to live there in peace, not forcibly displaced, and not as refugees, even temporary. These children are not just victims, they are the shattered innocence of our time, pleading for humanity to act before more tiny hands slip from their grasp. I want to leave you, as Nelson Mandela once said, let us reach out, and I'm quoting, let us reach out to the children, let us do whatever we can to support their fight to rise above their pain and suffering. We must remember that history will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of children. And I thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to Kamil Garibi, President of GKSD Investment Holding Group. Thank you. Mr. Minister, ambassadors, distinguished guests, what can I say? I always begin with what God said. The children are the beauty of life. But I always find myself attending meetings, talking, listening, promising. What are promises if we do not put them to good use? The problem isn't about helping children randomly or helping every now and then, helping them find food. We must address the problem at its roots. Why do we have these problems? Why are we facing these problems? Whether you're a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, that does not matter. It is the human being that matters. We were all born into this world to be treated with equality. There is a big problem, a big real problem. I'm speaking in my capacity of the chair of 161 hospitals across the world. We build hospitals for free. We offer training free of charge. This is humanitarian activity, but it's just a drop in the ocean. It really is nothing. It hurts my heart to listen to all these speeches. They're so beautiful. We meet, we have a coffee, we exchange business cards, and then, once we leave, what do we actually do? Nothing. We actually forget. Everyone forgets what we've been talking about. So there's no better place than this spiritual venue with the support of the Holy Father, who once said, we must help the children. Help children. They are the beauty of life. We must do something. Picture a disease. Imagine a disease. Cardiovascular diseases are the first cause of death in the world, with 18.5 million deaths a year, accounting for 80% of deaths in developing countries. 80%. In Africa, the situation is even worse. Only 20% of the population has access to basic health care, and 5% to cardiology services, to heart surgery. 330,000 cases in Africa, only 8% cured. These are just figures. I'm African. I'm from Tunisia. It doesn't matter whether you're Italian, Swiss. It doesn't matter. I was born in Africa. I was born in a beautiful country, in a beautiful place, where God has given me the opportunity to travel the world, to get to know people, and this is a huge gift from God. And I would like to add something. All the rich in the world, rich people, rich countries, if they only care about military spending, well, if that weren't so, if we were to help the poor more, it would be a lot better. So I really urge every one of you, once we leave, to truly get something done, driven by their heart. So something that you will be remembered for when you no longer inhabit this world. Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the appeal to do something. And now, Nouraya Abdul Majid, coordinator of the DREAM project in Mozambique. You have the floor, sir.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, everybody. I come from Mozambique, one of the 10 poorest countries in the world. Our population is young and rural, and 46% of the population is less than 15 years of age. In the last few years, the country had 2 periods of drought due to El Niño, which had a negative impact on agricultural production and on household livelihoods. Child malnutrition is a major public health concern. Stunting among children under 5 is very common, and this has remained very common over the past decades. 41% of children were stunted in 2003, 43% in 2011, and again 42.4% in 2021. Moreover, anemia affects the vast majority of young children, reaching 69% among those aged between 6 months and 5 years. Faced with this worrying picture, it has become essential to implement effective strategies to counter these difficulties and offer Mozambican children a healthier future. It is in the context that the DREAM program was born, committed to providing free, high-quality medical treatment, combining nutritional, medical, and social assistance to break this cycle of vulnerability. I am a doctor and have been working with the community of Sant'Egidio in the DREAM centers in Mozambique for over 20 years. The DREAM program offers treatment for HIV in adults and children, as well as providing care for other chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and epilepsy. It also works to prevent malnutrition, malaria, and cervical cancer. Currently, the DREAM program cares for more than 500,000 people and is active in 10 African countries with 50 clinical centers adopting its model and 28 molecular biology laboratories built and equipped. In 2002, when I started working with Sant'Egidio, more than 450,000 children in Mozambique were orphaned due to HIV. While in Western countries, the disease was already treatable and mother-to-child transmission was largely avoidable by 1996. HIV treatment began in Mozambique in 2002, thanks to the DREAM program, in response to the silent cry of children born HIV positive to HIV infected mothers. These children, condemned to HIV from birth, had a high risk of dying by 2 years of age, whereas in Europe and the United States, effective treatment had already existed since 1996. This injustice prompted us to find a solution that not only offered medication but also guaranteed a future for these children, breaking the cycle of infection and giving hope to new generations. Before the implementation of the vertical transmission prevention program, infants of HIV-positive mothers had a 25% chance of contracting the virus during birth or breastfeeding. Considering a high number of children per woman, this meant that many babies were born infected with HIV and risked dying, a true silent slaughter. For this reason, DREAM started the vertical transmission prevention program aiming to reduce HIV infection from mother to child, always focusing on quality and excellence of services. Thanks to this program, today we have delivered more than 150,000 healthy babies to HIV-positive mothers across the continent. The birth of a healthy child is an experience of great joy for an HIV-positive mother, a true miracle. There is nothing worse for a mother than to see her child sick, knowing that she herself has transmitted the virus to him or her. Moreover, the community of Sant'Egidio also wanted to address the major issue of child malnutrition and has set up 2 nutrition centers in very poor neighborhoods in Mozambique, where it provides meals to some 1,000 needy and malnourished children every day. Similar centers have also been opened in Malawi. In addition to nutrition, these centers also function as kindergartens for preschool children, providing a safe and educational environment. Here, the children receive not only nutritious meals, but also basic education, with educational activities to help them develop cognitive and social skills. Educators teach them the importance of hygiene, living together, and learning, preparing the little ones for a better academic future. In addition, these centers provide a place of protection and shelter for many vulnerable children, giving them an essential support as they grow up. These children are accompanied in their growth until as teenagers. They are involved in social activities to help the poorest in their neighborhoods. This is a true inclusion empowerment work, making these children who live in poor neighborhoods and are often at risk of food insecurity real protagonists in their lives and in the communities in which they live. Through this work with children, both in HIV treatment and in the fight against malnutrition, the serious issue of the ghost children not registered in the civil status system has emerged. Without a legal identity, these children have no basic rights. They cannot complete their studies or obtain documents or access essential services. They are children exposed to all kinds of exploitation. According to the 2017 official statistics, more than half of children under 5 in Mozambique are not registered in the civil status system. To address this reality, we initiated the Bravo program in Mozambique and other African countries, promoting birth registration of invisible children. As a result of this effort, we've been able to register more than 5 million children across Africa, providing them with an identity and a future outside of marginalization. In conclusion, let me say that a lot has been achieved in this more than 20 years, but there is still much to be done. For me, it has been a great human professional adventure. We have worked together. We actually saved many lives, restored dignity, offered new opportunities to thousands of children and their families. However, the fight against HIV, malnutrition, and lack of access to essential services still remains a great challenge. Children have the right to a dignified life with universal access to health care, food security, and a healthy environment. We need the combined effort of all to continue to make progress. Every contribution, no matter how small, can make a difference. So there is still a long way to go, but we have learned that with commitment, solidarity, and collaboration, now we can transform lives and ensure a better future for all children. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. It's good to see what we do actually get done, and these are models that we can definitely replicate. I now leave the floor to Magnus McFarland Barrow, CEO of Merry Meals, OBE.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. 24 years ago, I had a conversation with a very hungry child. It was a conversation that changed my life and eventually changed the life of millions of others. I suppose that conversation is also the reason why I'm here today. The hungry child I had a conversation with was called Edward. He was 14 years of age, and I met him in a village in Malawi during a time of great hunger. He was 14 years of age, and along with his 5 younger siblings, he was sitting beside his mother, Emma, who was dying. All of them were very obviously malnourished. I asked Edward what his hopes and ambitions were for his life. He looked at me and he said, I'd like to have enough food to eat, and I'd like to be able to go to school one day. That was all of his ambition at 14 years of age. And his words ignited Mary's Meals, a global movement named after Mary, the mother of Jesus, which sets up free school meal programs through which locally produced food is cooked and served by local volunteers to the children of their own communities. Today, more than 2.5 million children eat Mary's Meals each school day in 16 of the world's poorest countries. We who are involved in this mission all over the world, from those who make donations to those who give their time freely to this work, we like to describe ourselves as servants of hope. We consistently see that the promise of this meal draws children into school, often for the first time, and keeps them there. On average, school enrolment increases by 25% after the introduction of the meals. As we speak, 71 million children like Edward are currently missing primary school because of poverty and hunger. They're being robbed of their future, their physical growth often permanently stunted, and their lack of education condemning them and their children to a life of poverty. In the last few years, after decades of progress, child hunger is on the rise in too many places across the world, driven by conflict, extreme weather, economic shocks, and the fact that many of the wealthiest nations in the world are reducing their aid budgets. Recently, I visited Tigray in Ethiopia, where all these factors have combined to cause a terrible hunger crisis, which has taken the lives of many children and forced hundreds of thousands to drop out of school. I spoke to a teacher in an empty school who told me that when there are no children left in the playground, there can be no hope left either. Maybe hope should be another right for every child. In the previous panel, we discussed the child's right to education. We can see clearly that for the poorest children, the right to food and the right to education are intrinsically linked, and that school meals can uphold both of these fundamental rights, and other important rights too. How many children in the world are being trafficked or their parents forced to make dangerous journeys across borders simply because they can't feed their children or enable their education? I believe that every child has a right to a daily meal in their place of education, and I believe that there's no good reason why we can't make and keep this promise to the world's poorest children. We have in the human family more than enough resource to do this. We in this room could make it happen. Today, it costs us on average $25 to serve one child with meals for a whole school year. To serve every child who is currently without school meals in the world's lowest income countries would cost just over $3 billion per year. In the UK alone, we spend 3 times that amount each year on our pet dogs. I have nothing against dogs, but this for me is a cause of great shame. This isn't about what's possible, it's about what we choose to make our priority. And school meal programmes don't need to remain reliant on outside aid forever. In fact, by supporting the emergence of an educated young workforce, they play a key part in setting communities free from dependence on aid and creating economies that can eventually support their own provision of school meals. One of the best things about getting older now is to meet many young adults in countries like Malawi and Liberia who say, you know, without the meals, I never would have gone to school. I might not even be alive today. And they're in paid employment, or they've started businesses, or improved their family farms, simply because they can read and write and they're healthy. Wouldn't it be wonderful in this year of Jubilee if we accepted the invitation to be pilgrims of hope by making a promise to every child of a daily meal in their place of education? There could be no better way to help the world's poorest communities escape poverty, and no better way to uphold the right to hope for every child. Thank you.
Grazie.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And the right to hope. That is wonderful. I think we can go to the conclusion with Maximo Torrero, Chief Economist of the FAO. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, and distinguished guests and colleagues. We need to understand that children are not just our future, they are also our present. Yet millions are trapped in the brutal grip of hunger and malnutrition, and their potential is broken before it has a chance to flourish. Even in an environment with extreme poverty, inequalities, but peace, we can do all what we have been hearing today, and we should. There is no excuse that we don't reduce inequalities, we don't reduce extreme poverty, because we are in peace. Here is where the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, launched by the Brazilian G20 last year, and the support mechanism hosted in FAO, could make a real difference. We are focusing on a policy basket of best practices to achieve this and scale this up substantially. For example, doubling social protection in the next 5 years. And here is where I see everything I have been hearing up to now. Will be great to be part of this initiative so that we can bring all the best practices together to accelerate this process. We need to come up together to bring a machine of action coordinated with solid evidence so that we can create the change. But when a child grows up in a conflict-ridden area without access to electricity, clean water, or healthcare, Getting an education and health becomes an almost impossible challenge. Health status is essential to have real access to food of our children. The absence of health care means treatable diseases go unchecked and hunger gets exacerbated, further disrupting our future learning. This is where we need to understand that the solution is to stop conflict. Even before we start getting exacerbation of climate, that will deepen the impacts and will create even more conflict in the future. The right to food is not a privilege. It is a fundamental human right recognized in Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And yet, we continue to fail the most vulnerable among us. The statistics that we have heard before are staggering. According to our latest publication of the state of food security and nutrition in the world, over 45 million children under 5 suffer from wasting, the deadliest form of malnutrition, while 149 million are stunted and their bodies and minds permanently impaired. The first 1,000 days of life from conception to a child's second birthday are critical. Without proper nutrition, these children face a lifetime of diminished opportunities, breaking this opportunity to this education that we're talking so much. Breastfeeding, one of the most effective interventions, must be protected and promoted. Hunger is more than an empty stomach. It is a thief. It robs children of their education, forcing them into labor to help their families survive. In conflict zones like Gaza and Sudan, this crisis is even more severe. Gaza's battered infrastructure has left families struggling to access food and healthcare, while Sudan's ongoing conflict has displaced millions, disrupted agricultural production, and severely affected food supply chains. Children in these regions are among the most vulnerable, often facing the compounding threats of malnutrition, poverty, and exploitation. We cannot accept this as the status quo. We need to place the right to food and children's nutrition at the center of the global action. Through school feeding programs, we are not just providing meals, as it was mentioned before, we are keeping children in classrooms, reducing child labor, and breaking cycles of poverty. But again, let me repeat, that's when the schools are there. That's when the infrastructure is there. And when we have conflict, that's what is being destroyed. By promoting sustainable agri-food systems and nutrition-sensitive policy, we empower communities to build lasting resilience against hunger. The call to action is clear. Every child deserves to grow, learn, and thrive in a world free from hunger and exploitation. That is not charity, it is justice. So let us commit here and now to ensure that no child is left behind. Thank you.
Grazie. Padre Enzo, tabella di marcia rispettata.
Thank you, Father Enzo. We are on time, on schedule.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning. We may now begin the fifth panel on the child's right to family, the fundamental role of families in supporting physical, emotional, and social growth of children. Eminences, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I am very pleased to introduce and moderate this panel on the right of children to a family, a fundamental right, truly a fundamental right. It underlies a number of other rights of the child. Without a family, these other children's rights could never be enforced. If we think of children and their right to education, to healthcare, to food, to leisure, to freedom, to a healthy environment, we do so picturing them in a house together with their parents, their brothers and sisters, perhaps with their grandparents or their uncles and aunts. So if we associate the rights of children to their family, we do it because intuitively we realize that this is the basic fundamental institution that is required for the growth. Other institutions such as the church or the school can surely help. They contribute to the growth of children. while always, however, respecting the overarching role of the family. Sciences have shown that it is the very first years of one's life that are fundamental in terms of development, in terms of development of personality, and it is within the family that all these aspects are interwoven and are developed, especially during the early stages. The relationship with your mother, your father, shapes the very foundations of the individual and lays the foundations for life later on in adulthood, in terms at the social level and at the emotional level. In Amoris Laetitia, under item 172, Pope Francis says, I quote, "Every child has the right to receive the love of a mother and of a father. They are both necessary for his harmonious development." It's not just the love of the father, of the mother, taken separately. It's the love they can provide together, jointly, because that is the source of one's existence. That is the nest that welcomes the very pillars of the family. End of quotation. So a family is truly the fundamental right of every single child. This morning, many here have mentioned the importance of families in this process. How beautiful it would be if all institutions and society were to invest resources, energy and time in promoting families. That's what our children deserve. I now leave the floor to our first speaker, Ms. Mariela Enoch, of the Board of Patrons of the World's Children's Hospitals. Over to you. Thank you. Listening to this morning's speeches at this exceptional summit, something we owe to Pope Francis and those who helped him organize it. This morning, listening to everything that was being said, I asked myself a question. We're living in a moment with great contradictions. We talk about children who have the right to families. How many families do not have children, however? And that especially goes for Western countries. We're lacking children because of a culture we're all heading towards. Politics, too, is heading towards this policy of selfishness. I have to be well. My family has to be well, regardless of the consequences. And then there is a social issue. Our social organization does not give us enough time to be dedicated to a certain number of children. And then there are a whole lot of children without a family. The other day I met with a group of children who crossed the sea on a migrant boat. They were at a shelter center. We are teaching Italian to them. We're trying to shape them in order to have a job. But their roots have gone. When roots disappear, your sense of belonging, even to a family, disappears because they become nomads. They become some sort of nomads. But they should know what the value of a family is. But do they? This is the question I always ask myself. When doing my job, I always try to make sure that children come along, the migrants, with their families, never alone. Even in the most troubled countries, I always want to try and keep families together. This is something that shouldn't be lost. So we face a challenging task. Firstly, we must educate adults. If we do not educate adults, we won't be able to make sure that children are welcomed and can find in the family the true venue of their growth. Secondly, we must form a great alliance. We can no longer talk separately about families, children, grandfathers. We need an extraordinary intergenerational alliance in order to find a way to truly live in the family. So, hope is the virtue that guides faith and charity. It strengthens our faith, but it must make our actions tangible. I've listened to some wonderful things, incredible things today. I've learned a whole lot today, but I too have a question for you. And now what? What will we do next? We have analyzed a whole lot of situations. Now it's time to turn to therapy, to provide the cure. So I hope that these summits, these debates, can lead to actions that might be minor at first, symbolic, but these could be the seeds that we sow. And from these seeds, the respect for family, for children, for everyone can be born, of all those that are part of the core we are born into. Last Sunday, the Gospel mentioned two parents that took a child to the temple. There was a grandfather, many other people. This is what family is. A real family, not an ideal family, a real tangible family, which we must help create, and we must convey a strong message. For me, what really matters is to create solidarity, an intergenerational solidarity, and the Pope says this quite often too. This is necessary because there are too many children who don't have a family and too many families that do not have children.
Well, thank you, Mariella, for your contribution. And now I immediately give the floor to Hans Michael Jepsen, member of the International Board of Advisors, China-Italy Philanthropy Forum. So, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, why is family so important? We had, of course, this morning a very moving testimony. What happens when you don't have families? And let me take the attention to Asia, where we've seen the most unprecedented development, particularly in China. My own family has been living in China for 4 generations, and I myself have been living there since over 40 years, witnessing probably the biggest historic transformation of a single country, China, from what has been a rural and certainly not wealthy to a semi-wealthy and certainly not rural but very urbanized society. And what does that do to family life? What does it do to children? And I'd like to cast a bit of a light on that. Now, as we know, in the United Nations Convention, the right to family and family unity is very much enshrined. Now, how is that reflected? Now, these factors of emotional and spiritual home, to have a root, to be deep-rooted, it says those who want to grow tall need deep roots. And I think we can see that religious faith, we heard that in different forms, is of course one deep roots, not to become spiritual nomads. But let me say this, in Asia, of course, we had hand-in-hand rapid urbanization and a rapid change in family structures, from village structures, and we heard from the minister that it takes a village to educate a child, and it's so true. But now we don't have these villages. We have high-rise urban structures, and that means loneliness. We have anonymous suburban megacities. Now, 200 million cities with over 1 million inhabitants, 65% of the country in China is now urbanized, and of course we have medical, we have education, etc., etc. But on the other hand, we also have a mental challenge. We have mental health issues. All of a sudden, we have family structures that are very different. We have urbanization effects, we have parental breakups, and we have single parent families, and we have single child families. We have the tremendous pressure on the single child having to take care of one day to their parents and grandparents alike. We have the dragon mothers, so-called. What does it do to children? How much time is there? How much family time is there under these terrific pressures? Now, this leads, no doubt, to one thing, and that is unlimited access very often to electronic media. This raises the question of social media and, of course, the consequences. In that environment, of course, one can only say, where is family time in these urban areas? Challenges also exist in the countryside for the same reason, because urbanization continues to draw talent and create demand for migrant labor, very often leading to parents not being available, grandparents having to take over, again, emotional hurdles. Confucian-inspired cultures, as you know, they very much have academic achievement as their main goal. So great expectations, too little family time, and certainly very often too much screen time at the same time. Now, as we know, the unwritten rules in life, including the wisdom that should come with knowledge, or better still, wisdom before knowledge, gets short-changed in that sort of environment. There are, however, support systems, and we've seen that in Hong Kong, where we have an issue with many people living in yet not really very well-to-do environments, and they have too little family time, and they have certainly too little space. There, the Order of Malta has set up a homework club where they take out people from these squalid conditions, do 3 hours homework with them, so they can come home and have quality time with their parents without pressure. By the way, in Finland, that is very much the norm, and as a big surprise, they rank very high in the Pisa Accord. So in other words, the right of a child to family also includes to take that undue pressure off their mind in order to really have quality time with their parents. These are only few examples. Of course, we have NGOs that do tremendous work, like the SOS Children's Villages in many countries in Asia, including India, including China. We have Orbis that cure preventable blindness with millions of children in China. We are part of that in very much connection with government. I have to say that China is, of course, a country where NGOs do have to work like government departments, and if they do so, they really can shift the needle. I myself have been privy to a number of these NGO activities, and it's a very educational thing to see how that can work hand in glove. And when you see that a place like Hong Kong has per capita the highest number of NGOs on earth, it tells us one thing, that people that have seen hardship are most prepared to also help others that are in dire straits. So, is there hope? Yes, I think there is, and particularly when you engage individuals. We have in our company a CSR program, and it's very heartening to see how many individuals are signing up, wishing to participate themselves in helping out, in traveling, and in being part of corporate social responsibility activities. And indeed, these are also those people with the family values that really are rooted in a value set. So I think there is a message of hope, and when I see these many activities here around the table that are very humbling in comparison to certainly what I've been involved in, this is a very educational experience. Thank you very much, everybody.
Grazie Hans.
Thank you very much, Hans, for your contribution. We will now listen to Mr. Assad Rashid, co-founder of the 5P Global Movement. Over to you. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Rahayu, salve, buongiorno, a very good afternoon and greetings to all. Excellencies, the world leaders of today and tomorrow. Speaking on behalf of myself, my country, Indonesia, and the global 5P movement, I would like to firstly express my sincere appreciation to Vatican for its inclusivity by inviting me, a Muslim businessman from Indonesia, to stand here and share this speech. A bunch of greetings in the beginning of my remark is a testament of appreciation to the cultural richness of people in Indonesia and the world. No words could describe how honored I am here to share some perspective and reflections on children's rights. Excellencies, allow me to call for the world's leaders to revisit the philosophical thinking that was and might have been founded in the past as a proof of how the foundation of life is not necessarily something new. Indeed, our ancestors and forebears have laid down guidance that is relevant to the present and future challenges. Many of these foundations are based beyond any religion groups and religious values. It's more universal and applicable to the general population at large and embedded in the societal life of many countries, in particular parts of the globe. Children, since they were born, are the source of happiness, not only for their parents, but also family as well as people surrounding them. Children were also a symbol of love and commitment for a long-lasting life together when two humans merge into one. However, in many undesirable situations, children are the most vulnerable part of the society in facing multiple issues at home, at school, and anywhere they go. Rather than being protected, many children now become the victims to the dangers and threats of the world. In a society lacking understanding, respect, and justice, children no longer live in safety and happiness. Instead, they are forced to adapt to an imperfect world with lack of compassion, hurt, defenseless, and without protections. It is crucial for us, for families, policymakers, and world leaders to recognize that a strong societal foundation is essential, not only to shape our nations, but also to create an environment in which our children will grow and learn. Excellencies, allow me to present the strong foundations of Indonesian that are introduced as Pancasila, previously this morning mentioned by Madam President Megawati Soekarno-Putri and introduced by her father, Mr. Sukarno, our first president. It consists of 5 principles and values that may place children's value in one small entity called family and beyond to be a larger society. First, believe in God. The first principle emphasizes that it is important to uphold spiritual values and respect the rights to religion. We have seen that in many parts of the world, the freedom and space to practice one's faith are becoming more constrained and even unfairly regulated. This is even further exacerbated in some areas where one religion burns the faith of the others, or when nationalistic or economic values are placing religion in the margin in the pursuit of pragmatism. We believe that the principle to practice religion is inherent. We recognize that despite the diversity of faith that exists, even with a single family, all of them ultimately point to one shared belief, that is the faith in God. Second, just and civilized humanity. The second principle emphasizes the importance of respect for human rights. In times of conflicts and polarizations, we have witnessed an alarming rise in inhuman treatment of children worldwide. Many are forced to flee from their homes because of conflicts or migrate in search of better opportunities, leaving behind their homes and communities and sometimes identities. Excellencies, at home, children, often the beacon of hope and joy in family, are tragically subjected to violence and neglect. Economic circumstances force many to work in hazardous environments, robbing them of their childhood and compelling them to grow up too quickly. Family indeed serve as the first stage to showcase a just and civilized humanity. Third, unity. This third principle underlines the importance of unity amidst diversity. In times of growing polarization and societal discord, we have witnessed how ignorance can sow division among children. Many are thought to discriminate or embrace harmful values through racism and discriminations, eroding the innocence and open-mindedness that defines the essence of childhood. These are concerns that Your Holiness has outlined in the Istiqlal Declaration during his visit to Indonesia. It is a challenge that exists across all societies, but is particularly prominent in global and connected multicultural society with its rich culture and ethnic diversities. Our differences can either divide us or unite us. In Indonesia, our diversity serves as a modality for growth. We are united by the principle of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or unity in diversity. These principles and values have propelled us toward a harmonious life, even in our own family that is often so diverse. Family is the foundation of these values, and it is within the home that we first learn about the importance of diversity and respect for others, despite the differences. This is a lesson that we want to share with the world and generate to children worldwide. The fourth, consultation. The fourth precept teaches the importance of representation of voice and presence of the younger generations in the process of making a decision. When discussing policy making, whether in government or in business, or even within a family, it is crucial to recognize that the impact isn't solely about the short-term gain. It is about laying the fundamental bricks for our children's futures. We have to always ask ourselves in our decisions whether the decision will ensure that our children will be better off. Family as the home of our children's, implementing this principle, showing children the importance of their voices. We must first appreciate and value our children's voices within our home. Amidst rapidly changing world, with technological disruption and innovation, it is crucial that we prioritize the interests and agendas of our children, ensuring that their voices are represented for every business and policy decision we make. After all, the futures belong to them. Fifth is social justice. The fifth precept focuses on welfare and social justice for all the people. Children may feel injustice in many cases. Across the world, the social and justice system have failed millions of children who are hoping for security and protection for their welfare and well-being. However, children who grew up in dysfunctional or broken families often experience grief, sadness, and vulnerability, which can hinder them from realizing their full potentials. Many struggle with feelings of blame, self-doubt, pessimism over their life. Moreover, their most fundamental rights often remain out of reach, as they often lack awareness of their rights, such as access to care, legal assistance, or the financial resources needed to secure their well-being and future. This is particularly true for vulnerable children, especially those in minority groups, disabilities, migrant children, and those in jails, detention centers, and many other places where their liberty is restricted. These 5 principles are not just a series of words, but contain values that guide the life of the nation and state for our people. In short, these values of Pancasila have guided the people of Indonesia towards a harmonious life where children learn to respect and one another despite our differences in cultures or religion. The unity of the people and family prevails, all rooted in the foundation of justice. Lastly, to share an example, the government of Indonesia acknowledges the importance of proper nutrition for children as a fundamental human right. This year, our nation has implemented free nutritious meal program under President Prabowo Subianto for children in school, aimed to improve child nutrition, education, and this program reflects our values, what we call gotong royong, inclusive collaboration, where the government, private sectors, and the family stand on mutual cooperation to bring this initiative to success. This is a concrete investment of our future. It is our call, not only as leaders, but also as parents and families, to embed these values into our way of life. We hope the summit takeaway may reflect these values and shall be implemented further through stronger collective efforts for our children. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Shad, for your contribution. And now we will conclude this round table with Federico Vecchioni, the CEO of Bonifiche Ferrarese. You have the floor, sir. Well, thank you. I would like to thank the Holy Father and all of you for the many presentations that I had the opportunity to hear and share. Well, BF, the group I represent, is the largest agricultural company in Italy. We produce food in Italy. We cultivate about 15,000 hectares in this country, and we work with 1.5 farmers for the national production of food. Producing food, I believe, is the basis for good and tranquil childhood. BF grew by creating many Italian farming communities. When farming communities are revamped, whole territories are revamped. We did so. We are replicating this in Africa, in many countries of the world, and in many continents. So I fully agree with Mrs. Enoch and with others. At the end of this day, we have to actually say what each one of us is going to make. We're investing 1.5 million euros in modern farming, large farming communities in rural areas. We're doing so. We invest on education, on children. We do this because we are convinced that preserving the earth and enhancing the land coincides with the well-being of nature and population. So this project is an Italian project. It is a long-term project that for the first time sees an Italian actor in the Mediterranean with large issues such as the protection of people, the protection of new generations. We are doing so through a company that was created by the Bank of Italy and which was also acquired by national and international private investors, because we know that the challenge we have in front of us is not only related to profit making, because of course we believe in a lot of values of farming. So the highlight of our initiative is family. The family within the framework of our model farms in many countries. It means that we are going to produce products, but we will foster education and development. This has to gone also through the merger with the manufacturing, health care companies of the countries of destination. It's giving a future to many people who come to Italy without employment, and as doing, we want also to be able to train our generation and also the generation of people coming from abroad. So this is for example, we know that these few farming communities will be able to give the right response to our expectations. BF wants to be a reference point in Italy, as we were able to do in the last 7 years. And we've been able to grow in a country that believes in agriculture. We want to do this in the Mediterranean area because there is great interest in our initiative. Thanks to the government have given us the opportunity to create economic projects, but also development and cooperation projects for the development of these populations and the well-being of families, with a single objective, the personal growth and the growth of nature in the context where we operate. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Federico, for your contribution. And so we conclude this roundtable that is very rich, was very rich. I would like to thank each one of you. I would like to thank each speaker for having given their contribution to the children's rights, especially the children's right to family. Now, Father Enzo, sorry because we're late, and now I give you the floor.
Grazie.
Thank you. We have some information for the afternoon sessions. We ask you to be here on time. So, if you can please be here by 2:50, we could start the afternoon session a little earlier.
2:50, so we can start earlier the afternoon session.
There are some shuttle buses that will take you to the restaurant, where we'll have a...
To bring you to the restaurant in the Vatican, downstairs when you go down. Thank you.
E dico sì che possono lasciare le cose qui. Sì, perché tanti stanno andando... Vai, dilli in inglese. Dilli in inglese.
Father in heaven, may the faith you have given us in your Son, Jesus Christ, our brother, and the flame of charity enkindled in our hearts by the Holy Spirit, reawaken in us the blessed hope for the coming of your kingdom. May your grace transform us into tireless cultivators of the seeds of the gospel. May those seeds transform from within both humanity and the whole cosmos in the sure expectation of a new heaven and a new earth. When with the powers of evil vanquished, your glory will shine eternally. May the grace of the Jubilee reawaken in us, pilgrims of hope, a yearning for the treasures of heaven. May that same grace spread the joy and peace of our Redeemer throughout the earth. To you, our God, eternally blessed, be glory and praise forever. Amen.
you. From modern-day inspirations to timeless tales, discover the stories that shape our faith.
He is a model for all of us.
And yet they turned to the man who was so patient himself.
There are more people in slavery today than at any other time in human history.
Journey into the heart of the human spirit and history with documentaries.
She wanted to love until it hurts.